it's time to start talking about intonation and the action of your guitar. The action of the guitar is just referring to the bend in the neck. Now ideally, if we have the strings on top, we want the neck to have a slight downwards bow. Not as extreme as I'm doing here, but nevertheless a downwards bow. What we really don't want is an upwards bow in this sort of N shape. We'd prefer not to have a flat neck, but most specifically we just want that downwards bow. So just think of a really stretched out U shape. Let's explain that further, but this time with the actual guitar. So if we had this slight downwards bow, when I play the lower end of the guitar, the middle of the neck and all of these frets are out of the way and I can pitch to that F. If we had an upwards bow, the middle of the neck would be in the way, and even though I'm pushing down here, what would actually happen is maybe the 5th fret would cut off the string, and now every single fret underneath the 5th fret, instead of being F, F sharp, G, A flat, and A, they would all be pitched to an F, regardless of where you put your finger, because the string is going to be grabbed by that 5th fret. That's why we want a slight downwards bow to basically get the middle of the guitar out of the way and make sure that everything is comfortable without any sort of buzz notes. Now luckily I'm not getting any buzz or muted notes with the guitar, but what I can tell you is now that I've changed to 11 gauge strings, my original action with this guitar is now a little bit too much. So the strings are a little bit too far away from the neck and I've got a little bit too much of this downwards bow. So what I'm going to do is tighten the neck by adjusting the truss rod. Through the center of the neck of the guitar, you will find a metal rod, which we call the truss rod. Through the use of this tool, or maybe even this tool, if you have a Gibson SG guitar, we can loosen off and tighten up the truss rod with, of course, lefty-loosey and righty-tighty. If I was to tighten up the truss rod, where I'd go righty-tighty or clockwise, what I'm doing is basically grabbing the truss rod and I am tightening it, which will eventually create this upwards bow. And all we're doing there is creating more resistance to counter the tension of the strings. If we were to do the opposite of that and loosen off the truss rod, going lefty-loosey or anti-clockwise, what we're doing is giving in to the tension of the strings and loosening off a little bit to get more of that downwards bow. If you had dead spots or buzz and muted notes over here down the bottom end of the guitar, that means that you've got too much of an upwards bow. So that means that the truss rod is too tight and we therefore need to loosen it off so that we go from this and get it a little bit more relaxed. Considering all of the effort it's taken me to tune up this guitar, this really hurts. I've had to loosen off my middle strings to get them out of the way so that I can now have easy access to the truss rod. I'm going to slip this in the hole, kind of slightly shimmy it around until we find the truss rod, which I've just done there, and then in very slight and small and micro movements, I'm going to tighten up the truss rod. So now we have got a huge task in trying to retune everything. I'm actually quite comfortable in saying that the action of this guitar has been adjusted. The action's fine, we've restrung the guitar, we have cleaned and conditioned the fretboard, and the bridge is still at the perfect angle. So this guitar at the moment is in a really good spot. By adjusting the action of the guitar, we can fix all of the lower end buzz notes and dead notes that you might be experiencing, and we can also make the guitar a lot smoother to play. Now we might have another issue with this guitar on the upper end of the fretboard. If I bend the 15th fret on my high E string, there's a chance that if I have the guitar set up wrong, the uppermost fret might cut off the bend. So it might be fine here, and then all of a sudden the rest of the bend won't play because that fret has cut it off. Now the reason that this will happen is due to the saddle height. After setting up the action on your guitar, what you will usually find is that the lower end of the fretboard is going to feel really good to play, be nice and smooth, and it will also sound really good because you won't have any dead notes or any buzz notes. But that won't always be the case for the upper end of the fretboard, and that is because of the saddle height. The saddles are going to control the height of the strings on the upper end of the fretboard. If the saddles are too high, which means the strings are too far away from the fretboard, that's going to cause the guitar to be very uncomfortable and difficult to play because you really need to push in to get a fretted note. On the other hand, if your saddles are too low, that's going to cause two things. One is just your standard buzz note, and the other is a dead note in your bend. So instead of being able to bend a pitch, you get this, where the note gets cut off. So even though the guitar might feel and sound really good down here, that might not always be the case for the frets over here. Now, as a general rule of thumb, if I grab my ruler, by your 12th fret, the distance between the string and your fret should be anywhere around, 1.5 to 2 mil, just to get you started. Now for me, it's currently at a little over 3 mil. And then if I check my high E string, even my high E string is around about 2.5 mil. So I can tell you just straight up, other than of course being able to feel that they're too high, mathematics say that my strings are technically a little bit too high. So what I'm going to do is drop them down. Step one, as you'd expect, is to just tune up your guitar. Make sure everything is exactly where it should be, and then we can make our adjustments. Now that everything is in tune, I can grab the tool that I had all of 30... There it is. Okay, we need one of the smaller Allen keys. Here we have the saddles. To make our height adjustment, we need to be looking here, but just for reference for later, these screws are what we'll use to adjust the intonation of the guitar. Now my saddles, like I said, are a little bit too high, so what I need to do is go to each of them and then loosen them off. One thing to note while making adjustments to the saddle height is to ensure that you've got a slight curvature of your bridge. Now that I've adjusted the saddle height and fixed the bridge on the guitar, we can have a quick little mess around, little improv session, and make sure there are no buzz notes, there are no dead notes, everything feels smooth to play, and everything sounds good all over the fretboard. Once we've done that and we've confirmed that everything is right for the guitar, we can talk about intonation. When we intonate our guitars, all we're doing is making sure that the higher frets are in tune with the lower frets. If my low E string was played open, we would have, of course, the note E. On the 12th fret of the E string, we have also got another E. With good intonation, this E here will be in tune, and so will this E over here, relatively speaking, because it's still a guitar. With bad intonation, we'll have an in-tune low E, but then our E at the octave on the 12th fret, this will either be a little bit sharp or a little bit flat. The longer and thicker a string is, the slower the vibration will be, which will cause a slow, big wavelength like this, which will create a lower pitch. The shorter and thinner the string is, the quicker the vibrations of the string, which means the quicker and shorter the wavelength, which results in a higher pitch. If the note on the 12th fret of the guitar is a little sharp, that means that our string is too short. If it's sharp, it's short. To fix this, we of course need to lengthen off the string, and to do that, we tighten up the screw over here by the saddle, which will grab the saddle and pull it further away from the neck, closer to the bridge, and that will drag the string and make it a little bit longer. Then of course we have the inverse of this, where the note is a little bit too flat. If our note is flat, that means that the string is too long. So if it's too low, the string is too long, and we need to make it a little bit shorter by loosening off the saddle, which brings it closer to the neck, and slightly shortening that string. If the note is sharp, our string is too short. If the note is too low, the string is too long. And then you just need to counteract that with your physics brain that you've just developed after learning about sound waves, and figure out that tightening the saddle means it goes this way, lengthens the string, loosening off the saddle, it goes this way, shortening the string. So just adapt that to your situation. Step one is to tune up the guitar. With every other aspect of setting up your guitar, which is the cleaning, the conditioning, the restringing, and the action, everything like that, it is completely fine to do with the guitar laying on the desk. But with intonation, I've actually found better results by holding the guitar in my normal playing position. So when doing the intonation, hold the guitar in your lap. We're going to start with the low E. That's the first string that I want to intonate. Step one, like we've said, is to make sure everything is in tune, which we are. Next step is to play the harmonic on the 12th fret. As we can see there, we're also in tune. Now we need to play the fretted note on the 12th fret. So first the harmonic, and then the actual fretted note. As you can see there, the harmonic is basically in tune, minus maybe 2 cents. But then the actual fretted note is a couple of cents too sharp. Now that is basically within the realm of being intonated correctly. That's almost perfect. I'm basically okay to just leave it like that. But I want to be a little bit closer to perfect. So what we're going to need to do is adjust the saddle. Now as we saw, the note was a little bit sharp, which means the string is too short. So we need to lengthen off the string. And to do that, I tighten the screw by the saddle. So lefty loosey, righty tighty. That should lengthen the string and slightly flatten it. So we retune the string, play the harmonic. My harmonic is again pretty much in tune, and then the fretted note. I've made some adjustments and it really hasn't affected the intonation much. So what I might do just to make my life a bit easier is loosen off the string a little bit. And now there will be less tension pulling the saddle this way, and it should be a little bit easier to tighten up so I can make some more drastic changes. I've been through the rest of the strings and most of them seem to be within about 5 to 10 cents, which for me, considering this is a floating bridge, I'm starting to get a little bit frustrated, that is good enough. I have noticed, funnily enough, the G. The harmonic is basically in pitch, but then the fretted note is 15-20 cents a little bit too sharp. So again, sharp means the string is short, so we need to lengthen off the string a little bit. Go to the saddle, find the G, and then tighten up the screw. There we go. We are within 5 cents again. The Ibanez is done. That is how you restring a guitar with a floating bridge or a Floyd Rose bridge as well. So let's just quickly reiterate all the steps that we've done. Step 1 was take off the strings. Step 2, clean and condition the fretboard. Step 3, restring the guitar. Then in step 4, we adjusted the action of the guitar, making sure there was a slight downwards bow. If we have too much of a downwards bow, we need to tighten up the truss rod. Too much of an upwards bow or a flat neck, we need to loosen off the truss rod. In step 5, we adjusted the bridge of the guitar by either tightening up or loosening off the springs in the back here. Now the way that this works, let's just quickly go over that one more time. The strings are providing tension on the bridge, pulling it this way. To counteract this tension, we have got the springs on the back of the guitar, which is pulling the bridge this way, countering the tension of the strings. If the springs are too loose, that means that we don't have enough counter tension and the strings will be pulling the bridge up like this. So if your bridge is up and away from the guitar, you'll need to tighten up your springs and pull it back closer, more in line to the body of the guitar. On the other hand, if the springs are too tight, that means that we will have too much counter force that will be countering the tension of the strings, so the bridge will be pulling this way and it will fall into the body of the guitar, in which case you'll need to loosen off the springs. So if the bridge is in the body of the guitar, loosen off the springs. If it's up and away from the body of the guitar, tighten up the springs. Take off the old strings, clean and condition the fretboard, put on the new strings, set up the bridge, the action, the intonation. Those are the 6 steps that you'll need to set up your guitar with a floating bridge or a Floyd Rose. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching. I will see you later. For a more in-depth look at setting up your action and intonation, check out my beginner guide to electric guitar series, which I will link in the description below.